guy, like 21-year-old dude from China, who starts posting on Twitter or whatever. He makes like a Twitch stream and he's like, hey guys, here's why all the stuff that China would be doing anyway is actually good. And why.
Bro, they're in stream queue. Here, wait, here, listen. Okay, I want to see this, but do this.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, what's up?
Oh, well, I just noticed your opinion on Twitter about, I believe it was you. I just want to make sure I'm getting your position clear first before we get going. But that you believe that it was immoral to get rid of benefits for the unvaccinated. If they wanted to go on disability, they should be able to.
Just unemployment, but sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of unvaccinated people are also like immunocompromised, so some of them will also be going on disability, presumably.
Okay.
Anyway, would you like to do some introductions first before we get into things, or?
I mean, I don't really care, but.
Oh, okay. Well, I wouldn't mind.
You can tell me like what you need to say.
Yeah. I am Lapis. I'm mostly on YouTube and Twitter, but occasionally I go on Twitch and just talk with people. And I thought that your tweet sounded interesting, so I wanted to take you up on your offer of discussing this issue.
Okay, sure. So
I guess my position on this issue would be that I'm not necessarily sure that it is useful if our goal is, as close to 100% vaccinated society as possible, to coddle the unvaccinated. I think really there is a danger in giving state resources to people who are very clearly like trying to, whether they're a victim of misinformation or whether it's some sort of strange political statement, or really if they are just, unable to be vaccinated. It can be a bit of a weakening of the, I don't know. I feel like in the same way that when people, how can I put this point? Basically, I think that the unvaccinated right now are an enormous load on the medical system, and it is exacerbating crises across America and across, all sorts of countries of the world right now. Because of their refusal to get vaccinated, we are having overloaded hospitals and plenty of people dying of surgeries because of their choice. I don't see why we should, subsidize that.
Okay. Are you left-wing?
Probably, yeah. I call myself a communist.
You're a communist?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to ask because these sound like conservative arguments to me. But here. So, coddling, you said this is coddling the unvaccinated. I don't think guaranteeing human rights is coddling. For me personally. I don't think this feels weak, and this doesn't feel like coddling. Paying your rent, being able to buy food, being in a safe place of living.
Yeah.
These are human rights. I don't care what you do. I don't care who you are. These are all human rights. So as long as you're not committing an actual crime in which you would be put in jail or prison, you should be guaranteed these things. We don't take, I consider unemployment as something everyone should get, no matter what your unemployment status is, no matter why you're unemployed, nothing. It doesn't matter. I think affordable housing should be available to people, no matter the reason why they need affordable housing. I think it doesn't matter why they're unemployed. They should get unemployment. These things are not privileges. Human rights are not privileges that can be taken away from you. So I don't care if it's weak. I don't care if it's weak, if it feels weak. It doesn't feel useful to make these people be homeless or starve because they didn't get vaccinated. You can fire them, but we don't fire people as like a form of like punishment. We fire them because it's for public safety.
Right. I see what you mean about, everyone deserves human rights, but I
wait,
do think
I'm
that
so
human
sorry.
rights can be taken away.
Oh, 1 second. I'm so sorry. There was like one more. You made another point. I forgot to comment on it. And you said they're a load on the medical system.
Certainly. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, they're a load on the medical system. I completely agree with this. Doesn't mean we should take away their unemployment. There are lots of people who are loads on the system. People who are drug addicts are loads on the system. People who are obese are loads on the system. People who decide not to eat good veggies are loads on the system. People who go out every day and eat McDonald's are loads on the system. People who don't take vitamins are loads on the system. All of these people are loads on the system. We shouldn't take away their unemployment. This seems really like incredibly weird to take the state and like punish people like this because they're just loads on the system. This seems like a little ridiculous to me.
Well, anyway, I appreciate that you made your point very thoroughly. And I do agree that, sure, while I might criticize the way human rights is a term that's commonly applied, I mean, oftentimes what human rights really are property rights, more individual rights, as opposed to collective rights. Of course, I think you probably are not a believer in it just being purely individual. I think you also support a right to housing, a right to food, a right to a home, a right to water and things like that, right?
Yeah.
And, I'd agree with you there. But the thing is, I believe that basic human rights are taken away all the time. Isn't that what the American system is doing right now? It takes basic rights away from people all the time. The right to housing is rather insecure almost across America. There are so many homeless people. The right to food and water, I suppose,
is very real.
at least, even there, sometimes people's heating and water bills go through the roof and they can't even afford those sorts of basic necessities. I think that's a real problem. But at the same time, I think we shouldn't try to default to you can't take someone's human rights away because you very easily can. It's that you shouldn't, right?
Sure.
So when it comes to the unvaccinated being a load, the thing with drug addicts and the obese and whatever other group of people you want to be talking about, right? The reason that they are loads has nothing to do with politics and everything to do with systemic issues. No one becomes a drug addict as a political statement. Plenty of anti-vaxxers, though, see this as resisting, quote unquote, medical tyranny. The authoritarian government that is going to make sure that nurses who are working against a pandemic are actually vaccinated and protected and not spreading it everywhere when they quit their shift. Don't you think that is a big difference between the unvaccinated and people like that?
Okay, so taking this one step at a time. We take people's rights away all the time. Sure, I think that's a bad thing. Slavery was a thing. I don't think it should continue just because it was a thing. Just because we take people's rights away now does not mean we should continue it. This is why I said this feels like a conservative argument to me, because this sounds exactly like the type of people that we argued with all through the summer about taking paying off people's tuition and debt. People already paid off their debt. But just because they had to suffer with paying off their debt doesn't mean other people should too. Just because one group of people go through a bad thing doesn't mean other people should. Just because a system that already exists causes pain and destruction for people's lives does not mean we should just continue it just because we feel like it, or it would be good, or it's the status quo. Status quo isn't a good enough argument to continue suffering. I don't think there's any good enough reason to continue suffering. Just because it happens already doesn't mean we should continue it. There's no reason for that to happen other than it already happens, and why don't we just keep it going just because I don't like them? No, I don't care if it already existed. I don't care if it's already happening. I don't care if somebody isn't given the same treatment. Just because they aren't doesn't mean these people shouldn't either. This is one step to getting any group of people who are able to get unemployment. Those people should be able to get unemployment, period. It's the same thing when it comes to like voter rights. I like in lots of states, if you become a felon, you get your voter rights taken away. I would like to reinstate those voter rights. Will there be some people still who still don't have voter rights because of this, that, and the third or whatever happening? Yes, I think they should also get voter rights. But just because one group of people don't have it doesn't mean we should continue to have another group of people not have them either. That's ridiculous to me. It makes literally no sense. And then you said politics are not politics is different from systemic factors. Systemic factors happen because of politics. I mean, the whole reason why we have our systemic factors right now is because we do things like hate the poor, is because we have things like racism. Those are all politics, and that leads to people being in certain systemic factors, things like redlining. Those are all systemic factors that happen because of politics. I don't think you can separate these two things. People are rarely choose the politics that they have. Usually they're born into them. If you grow up in the middle of fucking bumfuck nowhere, you live like next door to Courage the Cowardly Dog, and you guys watch Fox News 24/7, and you grow up and then move to, I don't know, some suburb right outside of like some big city, and you're still listening to Fox News and they like feed you with a bunch of like anti-vax like conspiracy, you're probably going to believe it. That's just like kind of what happens. That's okay. Same way that if you grow up in a household where your parents are obese and you're like your family's obese, you're probably going to be obese too. You probably didn't choose that. It's the same exact thing. And this is why we shouldn't be trying to seek some sort of vengeance on them. Does that mean that they shouldn't be held accountable for their actions? Sure. But like, people who are obese are held accountable for their actions. They die sooner. People who are drug addicts are held accountable for their actions. They have health problems. And people who decide not to take the vaccine are held accountable too. They get sick. Typically, they die. Typically, most of the people who are sitting in the hospital right now are not vaccinated. Most of the people who got buried because they got COVID are not vaccinated. And they lose their jobs. Taking away unemployment is not something that I think we should be doing. It doesn't matter. I don't think it helps.
Well, to respond to your various arguments, the first one you mentioned is that I think you kind of misunderstood my argument. I don't believe that just because the status quo is oppressive or violent or whatever, that it should remain so. What I'm pointing out is that there's no such thing as intrinsic human rights. There's only as much as you can get by fighting. You know, human rights don't matter if you don't have them in reality. You know, if the US Constitution promises something and it doesn't deliver on that for everyone, then in reality, those rights don't exist. Like, you look at the Constitution of, I don't know, let's say a country like the DPRK, you know, it promises free elections. Does it have free elections? No. You know, the rights that exist in paper are not intrinsic. You only have as much as you can fight for. And we should be fighting for all, food for all of that sort of thing. I mean, honestly, I think that unemployment benefits and disability are kind of counterproductive, and we should just have a UBI that is about as, actually maybe a bit larger than the current disability that is given to Americans, but that's a conversation for another time. Your second point, that politics are affected by systemic issues. I mean, sure, but you know where there's a lot of really big unvaccinated people? It's not just poor, oppressed, urban white people. It's like rich white liberals. Like, there are areas in San Francisco that have some of the lowest vaccination rates in the country. You know, it's just astonishing. Worse than some countries in Africa. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, those are the people who would suffer if we got rid of unvaccination, you know, because, you know, they're not the ones who would be going on welfare anyway. They have enough money to sustain themselves. And I sort of see your argument. Like, you're trying to say that, well, just because they're going through pain, you know, just because they're inflicting pain on others, we should still be there for them as a society, because that's how we, you know, I guess, find common ground again. You know, correct me if I'm wrong, of course. But I guess my central thing that I think distinguishes the unvaccinated from, say, the obese and drug addicts is obesity and drug addiction. They shorten your lifespan, but they do not shorten the lifespan of others. Meanwhile, being unvaccinated can pose a very serious health risk to lots of people. You know, you're affecting other people, you're reducing their lifespans. You know, it's a very different ballpark. And I think, it's better if we had this conversation without comparing it necessarily to obesity and drug addiction, because I think the implication that people who are dealing with health issues like that are, in some way infecting others and hurting others is not necessarily a good argument. Whereas it's pretty easy to see how an unvaccinated person who catches COVID and then in a super spreader event spreads it to all sorts of other people who were unaware is actually causing harm.
Sure. When it comes to like the harm that you cause to other people and like losing your social security, I just kind of like don't care. Just because you can be harmful, I don't think that you should have those like rights taken away. They're still unalienable. I don't want people to be like, oh, you did like a certain amount of harm, so now we're going to take away your like those like unalienable rights. Once again, we can get into like prisons, I guess, but like still, when someone could also be like against incarceration as well, which I think would be, that's a topic for another day. I don't know, it just seems really weird, honestly. And so wait, so are you saying like once you cause harm to other people, you should have your like unemployment taken away? Well, my bad. Once you have the possibility to cause harm to other people, you should have your unemployment taken away?
Well, I mean, technically everyone has the possibility of causing harm to other people. So that would be ridiculous, of course. But the thing is, if you are unvaccinated, every single time you get into a social interaction, there is a potential that you are much more likely to A, infect people, B, be infected, and 3, inculcate a strand of this disease that will eventually go against the vaccine. I mean, we've seen in some of these areas where, a lot of unvaccinated people congregate, they get infected, and then a new variant emerges that is resistant to the vaccine. And then where are we? We've just completely have to restart the vaccination process all over again, and the pandemic doesn't end.
Sure, but okay, so you mentioned how like human rights don't mean anything unless they're like acted upon by like a state or something, or like by a group of people. I agree. That's why I think that we should be pushing to make sure that everyone gets unemployment or disability or whatever, whenever they're like, so that social safety net is there for them no matter what, period. That's what I think personally. So just because it's not there, I don't think that we should be like, I'm still pushing for that. Those are still my values. Just because it's not here doesn't mean I'm just going to be like, oh, hell yeah, brother, let's not work towards any of my values, I guess. Seems kind of ridiculous to me. Here, one second. Sorry, one second. Something popped up. So, okay. So I have a question. So like, how is taking away those rights from people beneficial? How does that help? How does like the possibility of making someone homeless help us with vaccination?
Well, I don't think that we should make anyone homeless, because I support a right to housing for all.
Well, I said a possibility of them being homeless. If they don't get their unemployment, they have a much higher likelihood of becoming homeless. So
I think that is a good argument.
But I'm working. Go ahead.
The dog is powerful, I think.
Yeah, he is. You can go ahead.
Yeah. So the thing is, I do believe that it's true that there's a lot of unvaccinated people right now who are, doing pretty well. And there's also unvaccinated people that aren't. By and large, I don't think that we have to fear too much about unvaccinated people falling through the social network, or like falling through, because honestly, I think that there's a certain sort of a conservative grift machine, right? Like, you don't think that they're actually going to just let people become homeless. I mean, they'll just
we live
go
in America.
On
yes, I believe they'll become homeless.
Well, you live in America. I don't live in America.
Where are you? If you want to tell.
I'm Canadian.
Oh, Oh, well,
I'm sorry.
in this discussion, yes, they will absolutely fall through the social safety net. Yes, they will absolutely end up on the street. This is America. Yes, that will happen. We have, what was it, guys? What's the number? Couple hundred. It wasn't like 10 million, was it? Couple 100,000, if not like a couple million people slipped into poverty during the pandemic. So yes, I absolutely believe that they'll fall through the social safety net. Yes, I do absolutely believe that they'll go homeless.
Well, I don't think that anyone should go homeless. So I think that is probably the best argument you've made so far because, I do support a universal right to housing. I guess I just think that we need to take the unvaccinated issue a little bit more seriously. When we introduced mandatory vaccines and vaccine passports.
You live in Canada.
Do you mind if I?
But no, go ahead. My bad. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So the vaccine passports and the to travel to other countries, vaccine passports for getting into restaurants. Once those were introduced, the rates of vaccination started to jump up because people were incentivized. I'm kind of thinking that at the point where America's at, you've been trying to give the unvaccinated the carrot for so long, and it's not working. And the pandemic is continuing to spread. In the state of Mississippi, there are so many people that have died of COVID that if you actually had Mississippi be its own country, it would be the second worst in the entire world. At a certain point, maybe it doesn't have to be getting rid of disability, but something needs to shove, like something needs to change. Otherwise, the pandemic never ends.
Sure. Okay. So, like most of those people who have died of like COVID in those like deep South states, a lot of them are black. Do you know why they don't get the vaccine?
Why not?
Well, a couple of reasons. Well, all throughout a lot of American history, black people have been used as guinea pigs for vaccinations. So it's a lot harder for them to get there. Another thing is that I think about only a third of our workers right now are able to get, for one, paid sick leave, and two, are able to get time off of work to be able to get vaccines. Those people who are the working poor, those people who are working paycheck to paycheck, all of those people are scared to death that if you haven't gotten COVID yet, we know for a pretty reasonable fact, you're going to be at least a little sick after you get your second dose. I was a little sick after I got my second dose. Losing a day of work can mean the difference between you being in a home and being on the street. So if you're in that position and you have to hedge your bets between keeping your lights on, keeping your water on, keeping a roof over your kids' heads, and missing a couple of days of work, a week of work sometimes, I'm absolutely going to take that. That's like, a lot of people are going to take that road. That's just like what's going to happen here. And I said, like, you live in Canada because, like, there are a lot. The disconnect feels real to me, where I feel like in Canada, like where you said, oh, they're not going to fall through the safety net. People fall through the safety net every single day. There are 30,000 people a year who die in this country because they don't have access to healthcare. This is the reality of what happens here in America. And so, sure, not getting the vaccine is bad. Sure, being able to spread it to other people is bad. But the possibility of doing that and the certainty of almost going homeless and then filling up homeless shelters with more unvaccinated people, killing more of the people who are the most vulnerable in our society already, and a lot of the other people who are the working poor these days who don't have the time and are scared to get the vaccine. I mean, it seems like pretty reasonable to be like, and once again, the carrot on the stick thing. We have not been doing like carrot on the stick in a lot of places, like at all. Isn't it like most of our states are run by Republican governors? Most of our states are run by Republican governors who are actively like burning all of the sticks. They're passing laws that says other companies in their state can't incentivize their workers to get the vaccine. Lots of them are stopping things like vaccine passports. Ron DeSantis, what is it, the third, fourth, fifth largest state in Florida, did that. Texas, Greg Abbott, who stopped a lot of schools from having mask mandates and vaccine mandates. Second largest state in the country. A lot of them did that. All of the Midwest, all of the Deep South. This is, I mean, to say that like we've been incentivizing people is, I think, is a little ridiculous. I don't think we haven't been doing that much at all, since especially a lot of Republican governors have been able to just basically completely stop any movement on that front. And that being said, I still believe that we should have some mandates. That's fine. I'm fine with them losing their job. But here in America, losing your job can easily be a death sentence. So while that's said, I think losing your job is enough.
But the thing is, once they lose your job, haven't you already consigned them to a similar fate that losing your meager unemployment benefits that won't even mostly pay for your rent in most parts of America, most of your food anyway, would already have? Like, if you're agreeing to vaccine mandates, you know, you're already consigning a lot of people to homelessness already, because let's be real, the rent is too sky high for the meager benefits that are already in place.
Not in as many places as you think. I live in Kentucky. Now, I'm not sure how much you know about Kentucky, but Kentucky is one of the poorest. And I think Kentucky, if I remember correctly, has the most amount of people on disability in the entire country. So we have a lot of people like that in that position. We have places here that haven't recovered from the Great Depression. So with that being said, our unemployment isn't bad. You can get a lot of unemployment, and thankfully, with our Republican governor, we're able to keep the federal unemployment bonus that a lot of people have. So thankfully, they're able to do that. In a lot of other places, your unemployment will help you, and there are other things that you can get. But losing your unemployment is such a big thing. Losing your job is already a really big thing. But I can balance that with saying that if you lose your job, you could have gotten the vaccine. And if you don't, you are putting the public at risk, right? So we already have that. What I'm talking about is, what more can we do? Sure, it hurts for that to happen, but I think we can balance public safety. I don't think losing your unemployment is helping. I don't think it's like more of a carrot on a stick. I don't think that sort of like coercion is helpful, and I think it will cause more harm than good at the end of the day.
But, you know, when you look at countries that have had the most effective pandemic response, what you see is they were the ones who were willing to put issues like, oh, but what about the liberty? You know, what about our American freedoms? They put them to the side. You know, countries like, I don't know, South Korea, they acted fast, they acted decisively. In America, there's all this, oh, but what about my right not to wear a mask? You know? And I think that stymies a lot of, you know, action. And I think you have convinced me that maybe taking away disabilities is not a good idea. But I think we do need to be looking at, you know, both more
Wait, you're thinking about taking away disability?
Taking away disability for the unvaccinated. I've come around on it. You've convinced me that it's a bad idea.
I didn't even know you thought that. You thought like taking away disabled people's disability was a good idea?
No. Disability and what's it called?
Is that are you talking about just like unemployment? Do you guys call it like disability up there?
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, as I was saying, I don't believe that anymore because you make good arguments.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. I just don't think like taking away disability unemployment is a great thing. And we just physically could not do something like shut down the country. We just can't. Where like every state runs itself, every municipality runs itself. We just can't do that. Like coordination over like thousands of counties is just not possible. The president can't do that. The Senate can't do that. The judges can't do that. That's like governors and legislatures, and even sometimes even county legislatures and city boards do that sort of stuff. Like president can't. So we couldn't do that physically. So here in the States, our system, it just wouldn't allow for something like a Korean style or like Australian style shutdown. It just wasn't going to happen. So like the best that we could do is try and incentivize as many people as possible to get the vaccine, and then like hope for the best. At the very least, it's like the majority of the issues seem to be in like, and I don't think this is a good thing, but less people getting sick is a good thing. At least the majority of the like sicknesses are happening in like Trump areas. So I think there's like a graph that I saw, like I think like Trump, the counties that voted for Trump more have like 3, 4, 5 times the amount of cases that places that voted for Biden more. So at the very least, like they're the only one. They're mostly the only ones hurting themselves. That being said, there's lots of places where people who would like to get vaccinated and who can't get vaccinated who live there as well. But my main thing at the end of the day is causing as less harm as possible and helping as many people as possible while maintaining as many human rights as possible. So firing someone and then having them be on unemployment is good. Taking away the unemployment just seems like it hurts people. It seems more punitive than actually something that hurts the public good, helps the public good.
So why not institute paid sick leave and bring back the COVID benefits as the carrot? But at the same time, I think maybe introduce more wide mandates for public areas, because those are the ones where you're really going to get super spreader events.
We'd love to. We can go talk to them sometime. A lot of those places are run by Republicans, so it's probably not going to happen. That being said, like it's not.
Well, what about the areas that aren't run by the Republicans?
A lot of those places are doing pretty good when it comes to vaccination already.
I don't know. Well, I guess it depends on the rates. Like maybe in America, compare that to global rates. Like I think you said California was like 56% or something, or someone in the chat said that.
Well, how many people in California are vaccinated?
Yeah.
I haven't checked up on this in a little while. Also remember, California is like 40% Republican, so. Fully vaccinated. Vermont's at 69%, Connecticut at 68%, Maine at 68%, Rhode Island 68%, Massachusetts 67%, New Jersey is at 64%. Where's California? Where do we get below 60? Hawaii is at 57%. Kentucky's at 52%.
Double vaccinated or only one dose?
I believe this is fully vaccinated.
Okay, well that's good. So, well, if you look at
California's
the maps,
number 16. It's at 58% right now.
Yeah, like a bad province in Canada, the worst one was at 70%. And if you look globally at all of the other developed countries, most of them are around 80, 90%.
Okay.
There does seem to be something systemically wrong in America that is leaving it unusually vulnerable to this virus. And I think it needs to change. Well, I agree that the Republican Party is quite wicked. And I'm not one of those, both sides. But I do think that bad governors, like the former governor Cuomo, are also part of the problem. Like, he cut funding to hospitals during the pandemic. You know, he tried to lie about the death rate. I think that it's a bit more of a bipartisan issue. And there are still Democratic governors that opportunistically removed lockdowns and restrictions and mask requirements. And the American people paid the cost.
Well, it's less opportunistically, but here in America, we value just different things. Take the gun issue for one. You guys in Canada, you guys don't have as many guns. Here in America, we have more guns than people. That being said, not everyone owns a gun. I think only like 30% of people own guns, but usually when you own a gun, you own many guns. But we typically weigh things differently, right? So you can say you're pro-gun. Usually socialist, you're a communist, so I would imagine you'd be pro-gun. Is that right? In some regard?
In America, I suppose, because a lot of the times gun laws lean kind of white supremacy, unfortunately. I think
Okay.
in the American context, sometimes gun control is bad.
Okay. You believe in the right, like, just generally, there are caveats that someone should be able to, like, just buy a gun. Do you believe that?
Sure. I mean, of course, I think you need a background check and things like that.
Sure. Okay. So we here in America, we balance the right to buy guns with the issues that come with that, which are gun violence. But we value by being able to buy guns, and we say we can try to curb gun violence. That being said, here in America, we value that freedom of being able to hurt yourself with like trying to take care of public safety. That's just how our countries basically run. Most people believe that. So that's just something that's always going to happen, right? That being said, we haven't handled COVID that well. Trump did a really bad job. Trump was the one where COVID vaccines like came out under, and he did a very bad job at promoting vaccines. He did ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, didn't get a vaccine himself, got COVID, tried to pretend he didn't, said to inject yourself with UV. Like, sure, I would like things to be better, but we have to work in the system that we have, and I don't think taking away people's unemployment gets us any better. Like,
yeah, and I agree with you now. As you remember, I think I told you earlier that you had convinced me. And I understand it's a point worth reiterating. And I'm glad that we could have that discussion because, in case anyone else had my idea, it's useful to understand the real human cost of it. I just think that in some ways you're making the same sort of argument you were telling me about earlier, that, well, just because the system is the way it is doesn't mean it should be. Can't you try to change some of those attitudes? And
yeah,
obviously
that's what I said. Well, when I said we have to work in the system that we have to work in a system where most of the people believe that we should be balancing that. That being said, like, I think if I remember the last poll, most Americans believe that we should have vaccine mandates. But that being said, that doesn't it doesn't really matter because California doesn't have sway over Kansas.
Yeah. However, the federal government right now does seem to be a little, I don't know, neutered might be the right word to use. And I do blame Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. But to a certain extent, it really seems like under the Republicans, you have a very activist federal government. But whenever you get the Democrats in power, they become quite flaccid. And they don't try to stop right-wing states from just abusing their people and getting even more radical because they're infuriated that a Democrat's in power.
Yeah, a lot of Democrats are also conservatives. There's a large. It's not just Sinema and Manchin. There's Chris Coons and I can't name all of them off the top of my head right now. But we have a lot of I mean, what was it? 6, 7, 8 Democrats voted against a flat $15 minimum wage. Yeah, I mean, we just have a lot of conservative Democrats. That, I mean, even when Obama had a supermajority, what was it, 60 Dems? We were only able to get the ACA. Yeah, I mean, we just have to try and get more left-wing Democrats in. We have a lot of conservatives in Congress. Most of Congress are conservatives, even at this point in time.
Yeah. I think that there is an issue, though, with just depending on, we need to elect more people.
Oh yeah, I don't believe that. Like, I think I take guys, what's the old guy's name? Linguist, please.
Noam Chomsky.
Anarchist. Yeah, Noam Chomsky. I take Noam Chomsky's position on this, where you should always vote and you should always care about electoral politics, but electoral politics isn't the end all be all of politics. You should be doing on the ground work. You should be doing direct action. You should be working in your community. And then you need to pick your head up and make sure you vote in an election and know what's going on and get people to vote as well. Like, that's like, I'm just telling you, like, we can do a lot of work on the ground, but if Republicans are able to kick that over on a federal level, it's bad. still, I'm just telling you, if your question was Congress looks like it's really locked up, then yeah, like we have a lot of conservatives.
But I mean, isn't that kind of a consequence of the national leadership where you have Biden saying things like, nothing will fundamentally change? What a terrible ethos for governing a country in crisis.
Yeah, he's a bad president. I don't like him. I didn't
we can
want to
agree
vote for
on
him.
that.
I voted for Bernie, but he had to Biden won, and so we picked the more left-wing candidate.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I'm also not a Bernie or Buster. I did advocate for my followers. I mean, I can't vote in America because I'm not an American, but I did advocate for people to strategically vote Biden. I also advocate that people strategically participate in elections. I just think that it's really important to have an important like grassroots movement constantly putting pressure on these people and not just blue no matter who, because otherwise you do end up with Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. And the other senator from Arizona isn't anywhere near as insanely like a sellout as Kyrsten Sinema. It's literally like just that she wants to profit. At least Joe Manchin has the excuse that he's an extremely right-wing area. Kyrsten Sinema doesn't really. She is so opportunistic and cynical and in it for herself.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, and I don't know if you heard about this story, but the Arizona Democrats are actually put through a vote that say that if she's not gonna support Biden, they're going to censure her and not help her in her re-election campaign. So they're doing as much. I think the Democratic Party is doing as much as they can. Well, they're trying at least. I think they're doing a decent job, but the Democrats in West Virginia need to do that. Okay. All right. I think we're good there. All right. Is there anything else that you really want to touch on before we go? I do have a little bit more stream to do.
I did enjoy talking with you. I hope that I wasn't too infuriating being a Canadian commenting on American politics.
No, you're fine. It happens all the time. We're just used to it. How's it up there in Canada? You like Trudeau? Is he your best friend?
No. Our blackface prime minister. No, it's very embarrassing. He just, no, I'm not one of the Canadian supremacist people. I don't think we're better than America in every way. Canada has many skeletons in its closet and out. Trudeau is just an embarrassment, but well, at least the Conservatives didn't win. That's all I'll say.
That's true. Didn't Jagmeet Singh he got a single seat, right? An extra seat?
He did get an extra seat.
We love that.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone. It was good talking to you. I'll follow you on Twitter if I haven't already.
Sure. I appreciate it. Good talking to you. I hope you have a good one. Take care of yourself, okay?
I will. And you too. You know, this is a difficult time for many people.
Yes, indeed. Well, take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, then.